In this lesson, we're going to look at the distances on the surface of the Earth. Now, we measure the distance in a couple of different ways. So the first way we're going to look at is the degrees. We know that, for example, there are 360 degrees in a circle. And now Earth is a sphere, so of course we're going to think about circles on the surface of the Earth. We're going to convert each of those degrees to a certain amount of kilometers. So if I want to look at the distance between 2 points on the same longitude or any great circle, it's just the number of degrees multiplied by 111.2. Those number of degrees we call the angular distance. Now, if we're looking at distances between points on the same latitudes, that is the small circles, then it's a little bit trickier. It's the number of degrees, or the angular distance, multiplied by 111.2, and then we're going to multiply it by the cosine and the degree of latitude. Now, if the angular distance is greater than 180, take it away from 360, because that just means we're going to go the long way around the circle rather than the short way. So remember, there's 360 degrees around a circle. And if you're going to travel 190 degrees one way, well, it's really just saying you could have done it shorter, going the other direction 170 degrees, because that'd be 170 would be the shorter way. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. So calculate the distance between 42 degrees north, 12 degrees west, 50 degrees north, and 12 degrees west. The first thing we want to notice is that we're traveling on the 12 degrees west, and we are traveling along the same side of the equator. We're traveling from north to north. We are traveling on a great circle, so we're just going to look at the difference between the 50 degrees north and the 42 degrees north. So we can do that pretty quickly. 50 degrees, take 42 is 8 degrees. Now we're traveling 8 degrees, that's our angular distance, and we multiply that by 111.2 kilometers. So you've traveled a total of 889.6 kilometers. Now let's see if we cross the equator. What's happening? When we cross the equator, this time we're going from 42 degrees north to 50 degrees south, and we're in the same line of longitude. So we're on the opposite sides of the equator. So what we're really saying is we're traveling somewhere north, 42 north. We're hitting the 0 degrees, and then we're going further west. Further south to 50 degrees south. So we've traveled a total of 92 degrees. So this time we're going to add the 2 degrees of the two angular distances together, because we have crossed the equator. So that's a total of 92 degrees that we've traveled. Now to calculate the distance in kilometers, we just say 92 degrees multiplied by 111.2 kilometers. So we've traveled a total of 10,230 kilometers. Now these are on great circles. Now let's consider some small circles worked examples. So looking at calculating the distance between 42 degrees north, 120 degrees west, and 42 degrees north and 70 degrees west. So first thing I notice is that they're traveling north of the equator, and we are traveling from west to west. So we're on the same side of the prime meridian. So we're going from 120 degrees west. So let's imagine we've got a prime meridian here. We're traveling from a point of about 120, and we're traveling that way down to about 70. And imagine that that is my 42 degrees north, and that is the equator down there. So we're certainly traveling north of the equator. We're traveling on a small circle. And we're traveling 50 degrees. We're traveling from 120 degrees west down to 70 degrees west. So we're on the same side of the Greenwich or the prime meridian. So we're subtracting the longitudes. That's got to be 120, take 70 for 50 degrees. Now, this is a small circle. So we're going to multiply the angular distance by 111.2 kilometers per degree, but we're going to now multiply it by the cosine of the angle of latitude. And the angle of latitude, remember we read lat then long, so that's these here. So multiplied by cosine 42 degrees. And that should give us 4,131.89 kilometers. Now let's have a look at the next one. We're calculating the distance between 42 degrees north, 120 degrees west. So we're starting off at our same point as we did before, over here, but we're going to be traveling now to 70 degrees east. So we need to be crossing that prime meridian. So let's minus them. So no, we're crossing the meridian, so we need to add them. So that's 70 plus 120. Well, that's 190 degrees. Now we know that there's 360 degrees in a circle, so it's probably easier rather than going that way 190 degrees to go the other way 170 degrees, and that'll be a bit shorter. So we traveled 170 degrees. Now to convert that into kilometers. So 170 degrees multiplied by 111.2 kilometers per degree, and then multiplied by that cosine of the angle of latitude, which is cosine 42, and that should be 14,048.41 kilometers. What I want to think about now is just some other quick ones. Calculate the distance between 5 degrees north, 45 degrees west, and 60 degrees north and 45 degrees west. So you can see quickly we are traveling along a meridian, and we are traveling from above the equator about 5 degrees north, and we are traveling up to 60 degrees. So we're traveling a total of 55 degrees. So that's a great circle. So we're just going to get our angular distance of 55 degrees multiplied by 111.2 kilometers per degree, and that should be 6,116 degrees. Let's have a look at the next example. 5 degrees north, 100 degrees west, and 5 degrees north and 150 degrees west. So thinking about this, here's the equator, and we are traveling a little bit above the equator on the 5 degrees north. And what are we doing? We're going from 100 degrees west. So west will be this side. So let's try and draw this in. 100 degrees west. And we're going to be going to 150 degrees west. So we're traveling further this direction. So just finishing this off, so we've traveled 100 degrees west to 150 degrees west, and we've traveled along the 5 degree north. So we started off at 100, we want to go to 150, we've travelled a total of 50 degrees because we're on the same side of the prime meridian. Okay, so we've just got to think about this. Well, this is a short circle because it's not along the equator or it's not on the same longitude. So we're going to say our angular distance of 100 to 150 is 50 degrees. Multiplied by 111.2 degrees per kilometers per degree, and then we're going to multiply it by the cosine of the angle of latitude. In this case it was 5 degrees north, so multiplying it by cosine 5, and that should give us a total of 12,185.45 kilometers. Now your turn is on exercise 6b, that's page 225 and 226.